Somewhere over the Midwest skies, 37,000 feet above the ground, a flight full of exhausted passengers was suddenly pierced by a child's scream. He wasn't just any child. He was the autistic son of a powerful CEO, and nothing could calm him. Until a stranger, a janitor, a single father in a worn-out hoodie stood up and did something no one expected. What he did next didn't just silence the cabin. It changed 4 lives forever. Stay with us to discover the quiet miracle that unfolded in the sky and the love story no one saw coming. And if you believe that kindness can change lives in the most unexpected places, consider subscribing. We share real healing human stories that touch the heart, and yours might be next. It started with a sound. Not a baby's cry, not a child's tantrum. This was a sharp, high-pitched scream that cut through the pressurized air of Flight 214 like a blade. It came from Seat 2B in the business class cabin, and within seconds, heads turned, brows furrowed, and flight attendants glanced at each other with the kind of panic they weren't trained for. The boy, no more than 7, was curled into himself, fists clenched against his ears, rocking violently in his seat. His knees knocked against the fold-out tray table, which snapped shut with a loud pop. His eyes were wide open, but he wasn't looking at anything. He was inside something. Next to him, Olivia Bennett, immaculately dressed in a cream-white suit, diamond studs barely visible beneath her dark hair, still tied neatly from a corporate meeting in Tokyo, tried to cradle him. Her voice was low and tight. Words meant only for her son, not for the watching cabin. "Ethan. Baby, listen to Mommy. You're okay. You're safe. It's just the plane." But he couldn't hear her. His scream pitched higher, raw, and primal, now causing the older man across the aisle to mutter, "God Almighty," under his breath. The woman in 3A raised her wineglass to her lips, pretending not to notice. A businessman somewhere behind pulled his sleep mask over his eyes and grumbled something about first class not meaning what it used to. The lead flight attendant approached hesitantly, trying to smile. "Ma'am, is there anything we can do to help?" Olivia turned to her eyes wide with exhaustion. "No. Please. He's autistic. He's just overwhelmed." The attendant nodded but didn't move. The scream continued. It was relentless. Olivia leaned forward, pressing her forehead against her son's as tears welled up behind her lashes. She whispered desperately, "Please, Ethan. Please. Mommy can't do this right now." The boy kicked out. His heel hit her shin hard. Olivia flinched, but didn't pull away. Her polished image cracked only slightly, but for a woman who ran a billion-dollar logistics empire and negotiated boardrooms full of suits, this moment felt like drowning in public. She had nowhere to hide. In row 19, Michael Carter blinked awake. He'd been dozing with one boot halfway off an old blue navy jacket draped across his lap like a blanket. The sound reached past sleep like a flare to his nervous system. He sat up, adjusted the tattered white apron tied loosely over his Henley, and turned toward the front of the cabin. He didn't move at first, just listened. Then came the second scream, higher, shorter, like a gasp trapped inside a hurricane. And Michael saw him. The boy. The mother. The chaos. He saw himself. 15 months ago, his daughter Emma had collapsed into sobs on the floor of a grocery store because the overhead speakers played a song that reminded her of her mother. Customers had stared. No one helped. He'd sat on the floor beside her and tapped the beat of her favorite lullaby into the tile until she breathed again. Now here he was again, only this time, 30,000 feet in the air, and someone else's child was unraveling. Michael turned to Emma, who had stirred beside him. Her big brown eyes opened slowly. "Is someone scared?" she asked, groggy. He nodded once. "Yes. Very." She didn't ask more. She just squeezed his hand. Then he stood up. The walk from row 19 to 2B felt impossibly long under the stairs. Michael was keenly aware of his faded military fatigue, his scuffed boots, his apron still smeared with flour from Tokyo's airport diner. He heard someone mutter, "Who is this guy?" He didn't stop. When he reached Olivia and the boy, he dropped into a low crouch, not in front of her, but directly beside Ethan. He said nothing. Slowly, deliberately, he extended a hand, not toward the child, but toward the seat's armrest, and he began to tap. 3 light taps. Pause. 1 long. 3 short again. A beat. Repeat. The rhythm was steady, low, almost percussive, barely audible beneath the din of the engines. A heartbeat, almost. Ethan's screams faltered. Not stopped yet, but weakened. He tilted his head. His eyes darted to the rhythm. His rocking slowed. Michael didn't change expression. He just kept tapping. Breathing. Quiet. Beside him, Olivia stared. Her lips parted as if to speak, but no words came. She didn't know who he was, why he was here, why it was working. Then a tiny voice from behind. Daddy Michael turned slightly. Emma stood there in her fuzzy socks, holding her carry-on bunny and a little yellow bracelet of yarn around her wrist. Without hesitation, she walked forward and crouched beside the boy. Gently, she slid the bracelet off. "I wear this when I feel scared," she said. "You can borrow it." No response, but Ethan reached out and took it, then curled into his seat and slept. The silence that followed was louder than the scream. The entire business class cabin sat motionless, as if they had all forgotten how to breathe. Olivia stared at her son, then at the man kneeling beside him, then at the little girl who had simply offered comfort the way only a child could. A single tear slid down her cheek. "You," she said, her voice raw. "Who are you?" Michael looked up, expression soft. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. "Just a dad," he said quietly. "Who's been there?" The plane hummed forward as if nothing had happened. But something had. In Seat 2B, Ethan slept with the yellow yarn bracelet clutched tightly in his hand, his chest rising and falling in soft rhythm. His head leaned against Olivia's arm, which had gone numb long ago, but she didn't dare move. She sat frozen eyes not on her son, but on the man, now quietly returning to his seat and coach. He hadn't given his name. He hadn't waited for applause or asked for thanks. He had simply nodded at her and said, "Just a dad. Who's been there?" and then walked away. Olivia Bennett was not used to being silenced. She was the kind of woman who filled boardrooms with her presence, whose emails made directors shift in their seats, whose signature could shift millions in funding overnight. But now all her titles, CEO, founder, philanthropist, felt small in comparison to one truth. She had just witnessed a stranger do in 30 seconds what no therapist, no specialist, no behaviorist had ever managed: calm Ethan. Without touching him, without speaking a single word to him. It had felt like watching someone unlock a door Olivia didn't even know existed. And the key had been rhythm. The bracelet caught her eye. Soft, faded, a little frayed. A child's craft project, maybe. Yet Ethan gripped it like a lifeline. Olivia stared at it for a long moment, her thoughts drifting backward to the times she had tried to comfort her son with noise-canceling headphones, iPad videos, essential oils, breathing exercises. All of them meticulously recommended, all of them failing when it mattered most. And then came this man, with his jacket stained at the cuffs, with flour on his tattered apron, with a rhythm in his fingers and a daughter with healing in her eyes. She pressed the call button. The flight attendant appeared with the same cautious smile. "Yes, Ms. Bennett." Olivia didn't hesitate. "Could you bring me the name of the passenger in 19C? The woman blinked. The gentleman who helped, yes. A pause, then a nod. Of course. 2 minutes later, a folded slip of paper arrived discreetly. Olivia opened it slowly, as though it might crumble in her hands. Michael Carter. Seat 19C, traveling with daughter Emma Carter. Age 8, final destination San Francisco. That was all. She turned to look behind her, subtly eyes sweeping the length of the cabin. There he was, Michael now reading a worn paperback with his arm around his daughter, who had fallen asleep against his shoulder. Emma's head bobbed gently with each bit of turbulence. The cello case at their feet looked more like a family heirloom than an instrument scratched, covered in stickers, and clearly loved. The image was quiet, ordinary, and utterly disarming. The rest of the flight passed in stillness. Ethan didn't wake. Olivia didn't sleep. She sat motionless, her mind moving like waves over sand, smoothing some edges, picking up new questions. Why hadn't she known about this technique before? Why had no one ever mentioned rhythm? And how did this man, this janitor-looking, cookie-dusted, soft-spoken man, know what to do? The truth pierced her like a pin, because he had lived it. Because this wasn't a textbook. It was fatherhood. Real. Raw. Broken. Patient. And he had passed some of it to her. As the plane began its descent, the captain announced, "Weather in San Francisco. Cool skies. Light breeze. Visibility. Excellent." Emma woke with a yawn. Michael helped her fasten her seatbelt, tucking a small blanket around her legs. Olivia noticed that he moved with care. Not just love, but gentleness, honed over time, as if every motion had once been studied and practiced for a child who couldn't afford surprises. Ethan stirred, blinking awake. The moment his hand felt the yarn bracelet, his breathing settled again. Olivia brushed hair from his eyes and whispered, "It's okay, honey. You're safe." When they touched down and taxied toward the gate, a flight attendant leaned into Olivia and said, "Would you like to deplane first, ma'am?" She usually did. But not this time. "No," she said softly. "Let him go first." The woman raised a brow. Olivia nodded toward 19C. The flight attendant smiled, as if understanding more than she let on. Moments later, Michael and Emma passed by Olivia's row. He looked toward her just once, and she met his eyes. This time she spoke. "Mr. Carter," she said, her voice steady but warm. "Thank you." Michael paused. "No thanks needed." "I'd like to buy you a coffee," she added quickly. "Both of you." Emma perked up. With cookies, Michael hesitated for a heartbeat, then offered the smallest smile Olivia had seen all flight. "We don't say no to cookies." And just like that it began. Not with roses. Not with numbers exchanged in haste. But with a cup of airport coffee, 2 oatmeal raisin cookies, and a little girl who started the conversation by asking, "Do you know how to play hide and seek with someone who doesn't like being found?" Olivia didn't. But she was about to learn. The airport cafe was nearly empty, just a few travelers nursing paper cups and scrolling through tired screens. It smelled like over-roasted beans and wet carpet, but at that moment, to Olivia, it felt like a cathedral. Michael Carter sat across from her, elbows on the table, his hands wrapped around a chipped ceramic mug. Emma sat beside him, swinging her legs, stirring whipped cream into her hot chocolate, with the kind of focus reserved for sacred rituals. And Ethan, her Ethan, sat quietly beside Olivia, bracelet still on his wrist, watching Emma like she was made of something softer than light. "So," Olivia said carefully, her voice still hoarse from the flight, "you do this often, rescue screaming children at 30,000 feet. Michael gave a tired chuckle. "Only on Wednesdays," she smiled despite herself. Emma leaned in. "Daddy says helping people is like playing music. You gotta listen first or it's just noise." Olivia blinked. "That's very wise," she said, genuinely taken aback. Emma beamed. It was my mommy's line. She used to teach cello. She said music was her way of talking to people who didn't speak her language. Michael's jaw moved just slightly. Olivia caught it. Something in that mention had pressed a bruise. He glanced away toward the glass wall that overlooked the runways. Silence settled. Not awkward. Not uncomfortable. Just quiet. Olivia looked down at Ethan. He was still fixated on Emma, who had now begun folding a napkin into what vaguely resembled a rabbit. "I think he likes her," Olivia murmured. Michael glanced back, smiling. "She has that effect. How old is she, 8? Going on 80. You're a single dad, I am." His voice was even almost practiced. "And her mother?" Michael paused, then met Olivia's gaze head-on. Not defensive, just honest. "She passed away 2 years ago. Breast cancer. Diagnosed late, gone fast." Olivia's breath caught. "I'm so sorry." He shrugged, but not dismissively. "We had good days. That's more than some people get." Something in the simplicity of that statement made Olivia's chest tighten. Ethan reached across the table suddenly and touched Emma's napkin rabbit. His finger traced the fold carefully, like he didn't want to break it. Emma looked up and smiled. "You want to make one too?" Ethan didn't answer. But he didn't pull his hand away either. "That's a yes," Olivia said softly. Emma pushed a clean napkin toward him. "I'll show you." And so there they were. 2 children folding rabbits. 1 man staring out at nothing, remembering too much. 1 woman staring at everything, feeling more than she was ready for. "You're calm with him," Olivia said after a moment. "Ethan, I mean." "You didn't hesitate." Michael's eyes didn't leave the tarmac. "Because I've been there. Emma used to have meltdowns in Target, in church, in the back of cabs. I used to get stares, judgment, pity. The whole parade." He turned toward her. "I learned that sometimes the most helpful thing you can do is not try to fix it. Just be there. Present. Predictable. Safe." Olivia swallowed. "I don't know how to do that." "That's okay," Michael said. "You don't have to be perfect. Just consistent. He'll meet you there when he's ready." She looked down at her son, who was now watching Emma fold a second rabbit with a kind of awestruck reverence. "I've tried everything," she whispered. "Specialists, diets, therapies. Nothing works when it gets bad, because it's not about fixing." Michael said, "It's about surviving with them, side by side, on their terms." Olivia exhaled. For the first time in months, maybe longer, the pressure in her chest lightened. Emma finished the second rabbit and handed it to Ethan. He held it like a glass sculpture, then offered her the first one in return. Emma gasped. "A trade. That's awesome." He nodded once. A small, decisive motion. Olivia stared. Her son hadn't voluntarily engaged in a social exchange in weeks. Michael didn't say "I told you so." He just sipped his coffee. "Can I ask you something?" Olivia said, voice tentative. Michael looked up. Of course. That bracelet. The one Emma gave him. It calmed him faster than anything I've ever tried. "Was that planned?" Michael shook his head. "No, that was just Emma." Emma, hearing her name, perked up. "It's magic. Mommy made it with me when I was scared to go to the hospital. She said yellow was the color of brave." Ethan held the bracelet tighter. Olivia blinked hard. "It's beautiful," she said. "Thank you for sharing it." Emma smiled, but then looked down. "I miss her sometimes. But Daddy says, missing is proof we loved right." Olivia felt something shatter gently inside her. She wasn't ready to name it yet, only to feel its ache. They sat there for another 20 minutes long past when the coffee went cold. Emma told Ethan about her cello. Olivia shared how Ethan used to memorize subway routes before he could speak. Michael listened more than he spoke. And for once, Olivia wasn't afraid of being silent. As they got up to leave, Emma tugged at Olivia's sleeve. "Miss Bennett." "Yes, sweetheart. You can keep the bracelet. I think it wants to stay." Olivia knelt, stunned by the offer. "Are you sure?" Emma nodded solemnly. It helped him. That's what it was made for. Olivia didn't know what to say. She looked to Michael for guidance, but he simply nodded. So Olivia did what felt right. She leaned forward and hugged the girl gently. "Thank you," she whispered. Emma hugged back without hesitation. "You're welcome." As they parted ways at baggage claim, Olivia stood with Ethan watching Michael and Emma walk away, two silhouettes disappearing into the hum of a new day. But on her wrist, the bracelet remained. And for the first time in a very long time, so did something else. Hope. The knock on the door came right on time. Not a second early, not a second late. Predictable. It was a small detail, but Olivia noticed it immediately. People who respected time often respected everything else. She opened the door slowly, a breath caught halfway in her throat. Michael stood there in a dark button-down shirt, clean, a little wrinkled sleeves rolled to the forearm. Behind him, Emma held a foil-covered plate with both hands, like a sacred offering. "Hi," Olivia said. It came out quieter than she intended. Michael gave a small nod. "Hope this isn't too forward. Emma insisted we bring cookies." Emma grinned. "Oatmeal raisin. Daddy says chocolate chip is for cowards." Olivia laughed, a short, startled sound. She hadn't expected that. Not from herself. "Come in," she said, stepping aside. The entryway of Olivia's home was elegant, but sterile hardwood floors, clean lines, curated artwork. It smelled faintly of lavender and lemon oil, designed for investors, not children. Ethan sat on the living room rug, lining up his toy cars by color and wheel diameter. He didn't look up, but when Emma entered, he tilted his head just slightly. Emma didn't speak. She just sat beside him and began lining up the cookies one by one beside his cars, matching cookie size to car size. Ethan blinked, then without a word began to help. Michael watched from the doorway. "You always keep it this quiet?" he asked, stepping into the kitchen. "It's how Ethan functions best," Olivia replied, retrieving mugs from a drawer. "Noise throws him off." Michael nodded. "Makes sense." She poured the coffee, stealing a glance at him as he leaned on the counter. He fit into the space like he'd always been there, like the kitchen had always needed something flour-stained and steady to make it feel less perfect. "Thank you," Olivia said as she handed him a cup. "For what?" Michael sipped. "Coffee for the airport. For the bracelet." For she paused, exhaled, "For showing me that calm doesn't always come from control." Michael didn't answer right away. "Then I used to think the same thing. That if I controlled every variable, every detail, I could keep the world from breaking." He looked at her. "But the world doesn't care about your systems, Olivia. It just breaks. And sometimes, that's okay." She felt the words settle on her like a coat she hadn't realized she'd been shivering without. In the living room, Emma had produced markers from her backpack and was now drawing faces on the cookies. Ethan watched wide-eyed as she narrated in a whisper, "This one is Cookie Commander. He protects the car garage. This one's General Raisin. He's the oldest, so he gets grumpy." Ethan giggled. Olivia froze in the kitchen, cup half raised to her lips. He laughed. He laughed. She turned to Michael, voice barely audible. "He hasn't laughed like that in months." Michael smiled, not smug, just quietly proud. Sometimes kids don't need to be taught how to connect. They just need someone their size to show them how. Olivia leaned against the counter, her polished exterior softening at the seams. "You make this look easy." He shook his head. "It's never easy. It's just worth it." An hour passed, like mist on glass. The four of them ended up outside in the backyard Olivia hadn't used in over a year. Emma discovered a neglected swing set, half rusted, but still standing. "Does this work?" she called. Olivia winced. "It's broken." The swing snapped last fall. I never fixed it." Michael examined the frame. "Steel's solid. Just needs a new seat and bolts." Emma turned to Ethan. "Want to help fix it?" Ethan stared. No reaction. Emma didn't push, just held up her marker. "We can draw a plan." He nodded. Later, while the kids scribbled diagrams on the patio with sidewalk chalk, Michael stood beside Olivia near the garden. "You ever take time off?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "Time off is a myth when you run 3 continents." He glanced at her. "That a badge of honor or a cry for help?" She laughed this time freely. "You're not supposed to say things like that on a first visit." "I don't do many visits," he replied. "No time for small talk." They stood there, the evening light, turning gold. Somewhere behind them, Emma called out General Raisin. "Just rescued swing." Commander Michael looked toward the sound. Olivia looked at him. "I forgot what this feels like," she said softly. "What does family? Chaos. Soft voices. A backyard that smells like dirt, not money." Michael's gaze lingered on her, not invading, just present. "Then maybe you didn't forget. Maybe you just paused." As twilight approached, Olivia walked them to the door. Ethan clutched the cookie drawings in one hand and Emma's chalk plan for the swing in the other. "Will you come again?" he asked suddenly. Olivia blinked. She'd never heard him initiate a question that clear. Michael knelt down. "If your mom says yes, we'd love to." Ethan looked up at Olivia. Hopeful. She smiled. "Yes, please do." Emma hugged Olivia before leaving. Not rushed, not awkward, just warm. And when the door closed, Olivia looked around her home. Same furniture, same walls, same air freshener, and realized it didn't feel so empty anymore. Olivia stood at the kitchen window, cradling a mug of tea she hadn't touched. Outside, the morning sun filtered through the maple trees, casting dappled shadows across the backyard. There on the grass, Emma sat cross-legged with Ethan, a blanket spread between them. A scattered collection of Lego pieces lay like treasure across the fabric. They weren't talking. They weren't building. They were simply sorting the bricks by color, by size, by smooth and bumpy, as Emma had called them earlier. It was, to Olivia's astonishment, the longest Ethan had ever voluntarily spent beside another child. And he looked calm. Michael stepped beside her, holding a chipped travel mug from his car. The smell of cheap diner coffee wafted faintly between them. "She's good with him," he said. Not boasting, just observing. "She's unbelievable," Olivia admitted. Emma learned early that sometimes words get in the way. Olivia turned to him, curious. Was she always this gentle? Michael smiled, lines deepening around his eyes. She came out of the womb like a whisper. Never screamed, never flailed. But when her mom died, he trailed off. Olivia didn't press. After a pause, he added, "She started talking to plants, and sidewalks, and wind chimes, like she needed the world to answer back." Olivia looked again at the children. Ethan handed Emma a red brick. She held it up like a jewel, nodding in approval. He smiled, a full, lopsided, fleeting smile. It nearly brought Olivia to her knees. Later that afternoon, Emma discovered the attic. While Olivia made sandwiches and Michael reattached the loose porch step, he never could leave a thing half-fixed. Emma had wandered up to the top of the house and found boxes that hadn't been opened since Ethan was born. She came down, covered in dust and excitement. "Miss Bennett, I found a wind chime." Olivia blinked. A wind chime. Emma held it up, tangled, tarnished, but still beautiful. Metal rods of different lengths dangled from a crescent-shaped wood arc. Olivia stared at it, a slow memory surfacing. "My mother gave that to me. For Ethan. She said it would calm him. I never hung it." Michael stepped in from the porch. "Mind if we try?" An hour later, the chime swayed gently on the eave outside the kitchen. Its soft tones hummed with each breeze, gentle, uncertain, like a new voice learning how to speak. Ethan stood beneath it, head tilted, eyes wide. Emma stood beside him. She didn't speak. She just closed her eyes and began to hum. The chime picked up her melody, or maybe the melody followed the chime. Either way, Ethan stayed there, hands at his side, listening. Michael leaned against the porch, beam arms crossed. "He's got good ears," he said. Olivia looked at him, then back at her son. He never noticed it before. All these years it sat in a box. Michael glanced at her. Maybe he just needed someone to show him how to hear it. That evening, Olivia found herself cooking. Actually cooking. Not microwaving a pre-packaged organic meal or ordering in. She was stirring soup, chopping carrots, checking for garlic. Michael and Emma sat at the kitchen table, helping Ethan build a paper fort out of cereal boxes and toothpicks. She watched the scene unfold with a strange feeling blooming in her chest, half joy, half ache. This was what she had feared to want. A home that sounded like laughter. A kitchen that felt warm even without the stove on. A man who wasn't demanding anything. Just being present. She turned back to the soup, blinking fast. After dinner, they gathered in the living room. Emma asked if she could show Ethan how to play quiet music. Olivia hesitated. "We don't have instruments." Michael patted the cello case he'd brought inside. "We do." Emma opened it like a ritual. The cello, aged and worn, gleamed under the lamplight. She sat down on the floor, placed the instrument between her knees, like a friend, and drew the bow across the strings. The sound was not perfect, not polished, but achingly beautiful. Ethan crept closer, inch by inch, as if the music were a magnet. And then, without warning, he placed his hand on the body of the cello, eyes closed. He didn't speak, but tears slid down his cheeks. Emma didn't stop playing. Olivia covered her mouth with her hand. Michael lowered his head. The music wrapped around them like a blanket stitched from every thread they didn't know they still carried. Later, after they left, and the house was quiet again, Olivia tucked Ethan into bed. He clutched the wind chime like a toy. Before she turned off the light, he whispered, "Can they come back tomorrow?" Olivia didn't answer right away. She kissed his forehead, then whispered, "I hope so." She walked out, closed the door, and leaned against the hallway wall. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like she was failing. She felt like something had begun. Something quietly miraculous. It was just a swing. 2 chains, a plank of wood, a rusted frame in the far corner of the yard. To most people, it looked like a forgotten childhood ornament, the kind of thing new homeowners promised they'd fix and never did. But to Ethan, it was something else entirely. It was the place he fell. Olivia remembered the moment as if it were branded behind her eyes. Ethan, age 4, barefoot, smiling, letting go too early. The thud. The blood. The hospital. The shrieking that came every time he even looked at the swing set afterward. She'd never had the heart to take it down, and never had the courage to repair it. So it just sat there, rusting, waiting. That morning, while Olivia took a call from a London partner, and Ethan played quietly in the sunroom, Michael walked into the backyard, toolbox in hand. He didn't ask permission. He simply stood before the swing set like a soldier assessing battlefield damage, then knelt beside one of the chain anchors. Emma peeked out the sliding door. "What are you doing?" she asked, balancing a juice box. "Fixing history," Michael replied. She grinned. "Can I help? Can you hold a wrench?" "I can hold 2. By the time Olivia joined them, her call finished, and coffee in hand, Michael had removed the rusted plank and was sanding down a fresh one he'd pulled from his truck. "You brought lumber?" she asked, more surprised than annoyed. He looked up at her, squinting against the sun. Never leave home without a plan. You fix things often. Michael shrugged. Things break. People too. You learn. He turned back to his work. And Olivia stayed. Just watched. No laptop, no headset. Just wind and wood and the quiet rhythm of repair. Ethan appeared mid-morning, barefoot on the stone path, wind chime bracelet still on his wrist. He stopped short when he saw what they were doing. His body stiffened. Olivia stepped forward instinctively, but Michael held up a gentle hand, not to stop her, but to reassure her. "I've got it," he said softly. Michael stood brushed sawdust from his jeans and crouched beside Ethan. "You remember this?" he asked, nodding toward the swing. Ethan didn't speak. His eyes stayed locked on the chains. "Looks different now, huh?" Michael continued. "We changed the seat, fixed the screws. It's stronger than before." Still no response. Michael didn't press. He simply sat down on the grass beside the swing and waited. Emma joined him cross-legged, chewing on a granola bar. "We're just gonna sit here for a while," she said to Ethan, "in case the swing gets lonely." A long silence. Then slowly, Ethan walked toward them. He didn't speak, but he sat. Not on the swing, just next to it. And that was enough. That afternoon, Michael added a second swing beside the first. Same design, same bolts. When Olivia asked why, he said, "Balance. One swing by itself is lonely." And again, she didn't know if he was talking about wood and metal or people. It wasn't until dusk that Ethan walked back into the yard and stood between the two swings. Olivia held her breath from the kitchen window. He reached out, touched the chain, stepped back, then forward again. Michael didn't say a word, neither did Emma. And then, as the light bent gold across the yard, Ethan climbed on. The chain creaked, the swing tilted, and Olivia pressed her hands to her mouth, frozen. He didn't swing high, just a little, feet barely scraping the grass. But he stayed. He stayed. When Ethan finally got off, Emma clapped softly. General Rayson would be proud. Ethan nodded solemnly. He's not scared anymore. Michael glanced at Olivia. She wiped her eyes quickly, but not quickly enough. "You okay?" he asked. She let out a shaky breath. "No, not even a little." He stepped beside her, not touching, just close. That was a big moment. She nodded. And then, before she could stop herself, "Do you think I'm failing him?" Michael looked at her for a long beat. "I think you're trying." Is that enough? He turned to watch Ethan and Emma drawing chalk stars on the patio. It's the only place to start. That night, after Michael and Emma left, Olivia sat on the edge of Ethan's bed. He curled beneath the covers, the bracelet still snug around his wrist. "I saw you on the swing," she said. He nodded. "Did it feel scary?" He nodded again. "But you did it anyway," another nod. And then softly, Emma said, "I didn't have to do it alone." Olivia blinked. "She's right," she whispered. "You never have to do it alone." She turned off the lamp and walked to the hallway. At the door, Ethan's voice floated out. "Can Michael come back tomorrow?" Olivia turned her face to the dark and smiled. "I think he will," she said. Then closed the door, heart thudding like a newly oiled swing in evening breeze. The sky that night was velvet and quiet. No wind, no traffic, no planes overhead, just the faint hum of crickets and the low rhythm of two children breathing through an open window. Michael sat on the back steps of Olivia's porch, elbows resting on his knees, holding a cup of lukewarm tea. He wasn't sure why he hadn't left yet. Emma was already asleep in the guest room Olivia had offered without hesitation. He could have gone home. Should have, maybe. But something about the night and her kept him still. Behind him, the screen door creaked open. Olivia stepped out, barefoot sweater, loose over her shoulders. Her hair was down the first time he'd seen it that way. It made her look less guarded, or maybe just more real. She didn't say anything at first, just sat beside him close, but not touching hands wrapped around her own mug like she needed it to anchor her. For a while they listened to the silence. Then Olivia spoke. He was supposed to leave after the diagnosis. Michael turned to her. "My ex," she clarified. "Ethan's father." Ah, she stared out into the dark yard. The wind chime Emma had hung earlier clinked softly like a whisper, brushing the edge of a secret. We weren't married, but we had plans, houses, schools, nannies with Scandinavian accents. You know, the whole aspirational catalog. She paused. When Ethan was diagnosed at 2, everything stopped. His father, folded like paper, said he didn't sign up for this kind of life. Michael didn't reply, just waited. "I told him to go," she continued. "He didn't fight it." Another pause. Longer this time. "And you know what the worst part was?" she asked, voice low. "It wasn't the leaving. It was how easy it was for him to walk away." Michael shifted not toward her, but with her, a barely perceptible lean, as if bracing alongside her instead of in front of her. "I never told anyone that," Olivia admitted. "Not my sister. Not even my therapist." "Why tell me?" he asked gently. She gave a small laugh. "Because you're not trying to fix me." Michael smiled faintly. "I gave up fixing people a long time ago. Tools don't work on hearts." That made her laugh. The sound was raw, unrehearsed. Then came quiet again, the kind of quiet that wasn't empty, but full. Michael finally asked, "Do you miss him?" "No," she said quickly. Too quickly. Then she amended, "I miss what I thought I had. The idea of not doing it alone." He nodded. "Yeah. Have you ever walked away from someone?" she asked. Michael's face went still for a moment. "I stayed too long, actually," he said. Held her hand while she died. Kept holding it for 30 minutes after, until the nurse said it was time. Olivia blinked. "Your wife." He nodded. Her name was Claire. She was the quietest person I ever met. But she had this laugh, like wind through pine needles. Sharp and soft at the same time. There was reverence in the way he said it, not regret. And Olivia suddenly realized he wasn't broken. He was carrying, and still walking. That more than anything undid her. They sat like that for what could have been 5 minutes, or 50. Eventually, Olivia spoke again, this time barely audible. "I don't think I know how to be vulnerable." "Not really." "You just were," Michael said. She looked at him. "It doesn't feel like enough." "It never does," he said. "But it's where everything good begins." Inside the house, a soft thump sounded, the echo of a child turning in sleep. They both turned toward the noise instinctively. "Emma, okay in there?" Olivia asked. Michael nodded. "She sleeps light, but she's tough." "She's extraordinary," Olivia said. "She's everything I didn't know I needed." That stopped Olivia. Her throat tightened. She looked down at her own hands, pale fingers against ceramic. Nails neat cut short. Hands that signed billion-dollar contracts. And still trembled when her son cried. "Do you think some people just aren't wired for softness?" she asked. Michael turned to her. "I think some people had to harden too soon. That doesn't mean softness can't come back." Silence. Then Olivia whispered, "I want that. I want to believe I'm not past it." Michael's voice was low and certain. "You're not." She didn't lean on his shoulder. He didn't reach for her hand. They didn't kiss or promise or define. But when Olivia stood up to go inside, she hesitated, then turned back. "Would you stay?" she asked. Michael looked up. "Just sit out here a while longer. I sleep better when someone else is awake." He nodded. "I've got night shift training. I can handle a porch." She smiled, then walked inside. Michael stayed, and in the darkness beneath the soft sounds of wind and chimes and distant dreams, he listened not for danger, not for noise, but for the quiet language of someone learning to feel safe again. The backyard smelled like grass and warm pine. Olivia sat on the top step of the porch, barefoot sweater wrapped around her shoulders, a mug of chamomile in her hands. The sun had just dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in lavender and ash. Streetlights blinked on like shy stars. The wind chime clinked gently, as if whispering secrets between tree branches. Emma sat cross-legged in the middle of the yard, her cello propped between her knees like an old friend. Michael stood behind her, adjusting the bow and tuning pegs with careful hands. Ethan sat 6 feet away, arms curled around his knees, his gaze fixed on the instrument. He wasn't flinching. He wasn't rocking. He was waiting. "Are you ready?" Bug Michael asked softly. Emma gave a single nod, then placed the bow on the strings. The first note was tentative, drawn out, unsure. But the second was steady. A low C that rolled out across the yard like fog hugging the earth. Olivia closed her eyes. She'd heard professional symphonies, funded private concerts, attended galas with quartets that played Vivaldi in glittering ballrooms. But she had never, not once, heard anything like this. This music wasn't for show. It wasn't for approval. It was for healing. Emma didn't play a song Olivia recognized. There were no scales, no structure, no set time signature. Just sound. Raw. Open. Gentle. Sometimes solemn, sometimes curious, like the cello itself was asking Ethan a question. And Olivia watched in awe as her son answered, not with words, but with stillness. He didn't twitch, didn't cover his ears, didn't retreat. He sat like a boy watching a star be born. Michael stepped onto the porch and settled beside Olivia, his hand stained faintly with oil from fixing the swing earlier. "She started playing again 6 months ago," he said. She stopped, Olivia asked, eyes never leaving Emma. After Claire passed, she couldn't touch it for a year, wouldn't even look at it. Olivia turned to him, something fragile in her gaze. What brought her back? Michael smiled, slow and proud. "She told me one morning she had a song in her chest that hurt if she didn't let it out." Olivia swallowed hard. That's when I knew she was going to be okay. In the yard, Emma's bow slowed. She shifted into pizzicato, plucking the strings, letting each note fall like a droplet into water. Ethan leaned forward slightly, his lips parted. Then came something Olivia hadn't expected. Emma hummed. Just a few notes at first, gentle and round, following the tune. Ethan copied her, humming back. The notes weren't perfect, but they were his. And in that moment, the language of calm was complete. A cello a-hum, and a little boy who finally found a way to answer back. Tears filled Olivia's eyes, but she didn't wipe them away. Michael noticed. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded. "I think I'm overwhelmed." "With what?" "With the idea that my son can connect. That maybe it's not the world that's locked him out. Maybe we just never gave him the key." Michael leaned forward, elbows on knees. "He always had the key, Olivia. You just needed someone to hold the door open long enough for him to trust it." She turned to him. "And what about me?" He met her gaze. "You didn't need a key. Just a place where it's okay to stop pretending you're not tired." Olivia laughed through a tear. "That place exists." Michael looked out over the yard. "I think you're sitting on its front porch." The music slowed to a gentle murmur, then faded altogether. Emma stood bowing dramatically. "Ladies and gentlemen, we thank you for attending this evening's performance of cello in C major and cookies in aisle 4. Ethan giggled. Olivia laughed too. A real one, unforced. Emma bowed again. "And now we request our payment." Michael raised an eyebrow. "Payment? 2 s'mores. Minimum. And a bedtime story. Michael chuckled. We'll negotiate. Ethan stood and looked at Olivia. Can we stay outside longer? He asked. His voice was soft but clear. Olivia knelt down, brushing a curl from his forehead. As long as you want. He didn't answer with words. He just took her hand and sat down beside her. They sat like that, Olivia, Ethan, Michael, and Emma beneath a sky full of stars, neither sharp nor bright, but present. A cello leaned against a tree. A wind chime whispered from the porch. And for the first time since she'd become a mother, Olivia didn't feel like she was holding up the world by herself. She felt held. Later, as Michael carried a sleepy Emma to the guest room, Olivia lingered on the back porch. She looked at the cello, the stars, the swing set, the life she thought she'd never have. She didn't need a ring. She didn't need promises. She just needed this. Presence, kindness, and a place where her son could hum without fear. Inside, before switching off the hall light, Olivia whispered into the quiet house. Stay. And though no one answered, she knew he would. The ballroom at the Fairmont glowed with warm amber light, all marble pillars and soft jazz, a scene sculpted for power and charm. It smelled like wealth champagne, truffle oil, and freshly printed contracts waiting to be signed. Olivia stood near the center table, a glass of water in her hand, her spine straight, but not rigid. She wore a sleek navy blue dress, no jewelry, but her watch. Ethan stood beside her in a little blazer, hair-combed face calm. On her other side, Michael in a charcoal gray button-down had one hand gently resting on Emma's shoulder. They didn't belong here. That was obvious. But they were here anyway. The invitation hadn't included a +1. But Olivia had ignored that. Because after everything, the swing, the cello, the wind chime, she refused to enter any more rooms without the people who made her feel human. The decision had already raised some eyebrows. Her assistant had hesitated. A board member had subtly suggested she make arrangements for a nanny. She hadn't answered. She just arrived. With her son. With her guests. With her truth. A waiter passed. Olivia leaned down to Ethan. Do you want to sit at the table or stay by the wall? Wall, he said simply. Emma took his hand and led him toward a quiet spot near the bay windows. Olivia watched them go with a flicker of gratitude. Michael leaned closer. You okay? She nodded. More than I thought I'd be. Then he walked in. Richard Talbot, hedge fund magnate, 5-star ego, one of the potential lead investors in Bennett Global's newest venture. He was tall, graying at the temples, and always wore a smile like he owned the air around him. He approached Olivia with the confidence of a man who'd never been told no. Olivia, he said, extending a hand. Didn't expect to see a child at this kind of dinner. She shook his hand calmly. This child is my son. Talbot chuckled. Ah, right. I've heard rumors. He glanced toward Ethan, who stood holding a juice cup, head turned slightly toward the window. Poor thing, he added casually. Must be difficult traveling with a broken child. The words landed like a slap, not loud, but sharp. Michael stiffened. Olivia said nothing yet. Talbot turned to Michael. And you are Michael, extended a hand without smiling. Michael Carter. Talbot raised an eyebrow. Security. Nanny Michael didn't answer. He didn't need to. Because in that moment, Ethan walked across the room. Not running. Not crying. Just walking. Straight toward Talbot. Emma trailed behind him, calm and curious. Ethan stopped 2 feet away from the man and looked up. Then, in the kind of silence that only a child can command, he reached into his blazer pocket and pulled out the yellow yarn bracelet. He extended it to Talbot. The room went still. What's this? Talbot asked, clearly uncomfortable. Ethan didn't answer. Emma did. "It's for when you feel scared," she said, "or say mean things by accident." Talbot blinked. I didn't mean Ethan placed the bracelet on Talbot's palm, and walked away. No dramatics, no meltdown. Just a small boy, offering healing to the very man who called him broken. The room didn't know how to respond, but Olivia did. She stepped forward, her voice low but clear. "Ethan's not broken," she said. "He's brilliant and kind, and he understands something most of us forget." Talbot opened his mouth. She cut him off. "That words matter. That presence matters. That you don't have to be typical to be worthy." A pause. She looked around the room. "I brought him tonight not because I needed to, but because I wanted to. He's part of who I am. And if anyone here has a problem with that, or with the people who helped me raise him, then you're welcome to invest elsewhere." Silence. Then a slow clap. From the CFO. Then another from a young executive at the back. Soon the room was applauding. Not wildly, but steadily. Respectfully. Talbot, red-faced, said nothing. He folded the bracelet in his hand and gave a curt nod before walking away. Later, as the night wound down, Olivia sat outside the ballroom on a bench. Ethan leaned against her, tired. Emma dozed on Michael's shoulder nearby. "You were incredible," Michael said quietly. Olivia shook her head. "I didn't plan to speak. Sometimes the best words are the ones that come after something real." She looked at him, heart still beating fast from the confrontation. "I've spent years crafting the right pitches, the right optics, the perfect persona. And tonight, my son gave away a bracelet and taught the room more than I ever could." Michael smiled. He had help. She looked at him. "You think I did the right thing?" I think he said, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. "You stopped hiding. And that's always the right thing." She didn't kiss him, but something in her heart leaned forward and didn't retreat. The conference room was made of glass and power. 12 leather chairs. 1 polished mahogany table. The skyline of San Francisco framed behind it like a movie set. On the screen at the far end, projections, figures, graphs. Words like scale, equity, global reach. Numbers with more zeros than most people see in a lifetime. Olivia sat at the head of the table, hands folded, eyes steady. She had worn a dark gray suit that morning, not because she needed to, but because she wanted to look her old life in the eye one more time. Across from her sat the full board of Bennett Global. To her right, CFO Marshall King, always hungry. To her left, COO Diane Lennox, the one who once whispered, "Don't let motherhood dull your edge." They were all waiting, not for discussion, for her approval. The Talbot deal was the biggest in company history. A $400 million infusion that would expand their international operations fund, 3 new logistics centers, and according to the strategy team, triple their valuation within 24 months. It was clean, efficient, financially impeccable, and Olivia had once believed it would be the crown jewel of her career. Now it felt like a cage. She looked down at the leather portfolio in front of her. Tucked inside, almost absurdly out of place, was a child's drawing on hotel stationery. It showed 2 stick figures, 1 tall, 1 small, holding hands beneath a swing set. Above them in orange crayon the words, "We fixed it." Signed Emma and Ethan. Olivia closed the folder. She inhaled and spoke. "I'm turning it down." The room blinked. Marshall leaned forward. "I'm sorry, what I'm walking away from the Talbot deal," Olivia repeated, voice calm, effective immediately. Olivia Diane said slowly, "We have signed letters of intent. We've allocated resources. If this is about what happened at the dinner, it's not." Olivia cut in. "Or it is, but not in the way you think." She stood smoothing the fabric of her suit, then walked to the window. The city spread out below her, sharp, fast, transactional, just like she used to be. When I started this company, she said, I thought the goal was dominance, reach, efficiency. I wanted to build a machine so precise it would never fail. She turned to face them. But now I see that flawlessness isn't strength, it's fear. No one moved. I have a son, she continued. You've all known that. But what you don't know is how hard I work to keep him from inconveniencing this company. How many late meetings I took while he cried at home. How many weekends I gave to clients while therapists tried to understand his silence. She looked at Marshall. You once told me that motherhood makes leaders more relatable. I think you meant it would make me easier to sell. Marshall didn't deny it. And Diane Olivia said softer, now you told me not to let motherhood dull my edge. But I'm realizing I don't want to lead with sharpness anymore. She walked back to her seat. I want to lead with presence, with people who believe in long games, with investors who don't flinch when they see a child at a dinner table. She paused. I know what we're walking away from, but I also know what we're gaining. No one spoke for a moment. Then Marshall asked flatly, And what is that exactly? Olivia smiled. Peace. She stepped out of the room before they could argue. Not because she was running, but because she didn't need to defend clarity. Michael was waiting in the lobby, hands in his jacket pockets, his expression unreadable. You did it, he said as she approached. I did. How'd it feel? Olivia exhaled, like I took off a suit made of armor and remembered how to breathe. Michael nodded. So, lunch, she laughed. You always cut to the essentials. I'm raising an 8-year-old, he said. Essentials are all we get. They picked up Thai food and brought it back to Olivia's house, where Emma and Ethan were knee-deep in a fort made of couch cushions, cereal boxes, and 24 plastic animals. Ethan looked up when Olivia walked in. Did the meeting end? Yes, she said, kneeling beside him. And guess what? Mommy's not flying to Dubai next week. He blinked. No airport? No airport, she said, brushing his hair back. Just home. Emma raised her hand like a student. What about the investor guy, the grumpy one? Gone, Olivia said. Emma grinned. Did you use the CEO voice? Olivia looked at Michael, then smiled. No, I used my mom voice. It's stronger. That night, after the kids fell asleep in the fort, they refused to disassemble Olivia, and Michael sat on the back porch. Same mugs, same night air, same wind chime swaying in rhythm. But something had shifted. She wasn't the woman trying to hold everything together anymore. She was simply here, present, whole. Michael leaned back in his chair. So what now? I don't know, Olivia admitted. But for the first time in a decade, I'm okay with that. He looked at her. You're more than okay. She met his eyes. You are too. He reached for her hand. This time she didn't pull away. It began with a whisper, a tremble in the early hours of a Sunday morning. Emma, who normally bounced down the stairs asking about pancakes and bugs on the porch, didn't come out of her room. Olivia found her curled up under the blanket cheeks, flushed forehead hot to the touch. Sweetheart, she asked softly. Emma didn't answer. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Michael appeared seconds later. One look at his daughter, and the calm on his face evaporated like mist. She's burning up, Olivia said, already grabbing her phone. The pediatric urgent care was quiet, too quiet for a place usually filled with crying toddlers and cartoons on loop. Michael sat beside Emma's bed, her tiny hand swallowed in his. The doctor spoke in measured tones. It's most likely a viral infection. We've ruled out strep and flu. No rash. Breathing is steady. But we'd like to keep her under observation for the next 12 hours just to be safe. Michael nodded, jaw tight. Emma still hadn't spoken. Not one word. Not even to him. Back home, Olivia paced. Ethan stood in the living room watching her like a silent mirror. "Do you want to draw?" she asked. "Or listen to your favorite playlist?" He shook his head. She tried again. "Want to build a train track or line up your stones?" Nothing. Just eyes wide, focused, listening in a way she hadn't seen before. Then, without a word, he walked to the hallway table, reached into the drawer, and pulled out something Olivia hadn't seen in days. The yellow yarn bracelet. He looked at it for a long time, turned it over in his small hands, then walked to Olivia and held it out. "For her," he said. Her knees nearly gave out. "You want to bring this to Emma?" He nodded. "Simple. Certain." They arrived at the hospital just past 6 p.m. Emma lay quiet, her skin pale against the star-patterned blanket Michael had insisted on bringing from home. He looked up when they entered, exhaustion carved deep into his face. Ethan didn't hesitate. He walked to the side of the bed, climbed carefully onto the chair, and gently placed the bracelet on Emma's wrist. Then he whispered, barely audible, "It helped me when I was scared. You can keep it now." Emma stirred. Her lips moved, and for the first time that day, she spoke, a whisper rasped into the quiet thanks. Michael broke. His head dropped into his hands. Olivia placed a hand on his back, steady and warm. "Ethan did that," he whispered. Olivia nodded, tears in her eyes. He knew exactly what she needed. Later that night, when Emma had eaten a few spoonfuls of soup and fallen asleep beside her father, Olivia walked Ethan to the hospital cafe for a break. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A vending machine hummed in the corner. Ethan sat at the table with a juice box and a banana, silent. "Do you want to talk about it?" she asked. He peeled the banana but didn't eat it. Just held it. "I knew," he said softly. "Knew what?" That she was scared. Olivia reached across the table, taking his free hand. "And you helped her. You helped her more than anyone else could." He looked up at her. "I used to think only grown-ups could help. What changed you?" Her throat closed. She blinked fast. On the way home, as he dozed in the back seat, Olivia thought about all the things that had changed. A man with a toolbox and a cello. A girl who saw colors and emotions. A boy who once screamed at the world, now offering it peace. And a woman who had once thought strength meant silence, now learning that softness could be mightier. The next morning, Emma was sitting up in bed. Color returned to her cheeks. "I think I dreamed about cookies," she told Michael. He kissed her forehead. "That's when you know you're getting better." When Ethan walked in with a folded napkin shaped like a heart, she beamed. "You want to play?" she asked, lifting her arms in a shrug. He nodded. "Only if you teach me the rabbit fold again." Emma held up the napkin he'd brought. "You already did it perfectly." Michael and Olivia watched them from the doorway, shoulder to shoulder. "You okay?" Olivia asked. Michael turned to her. "I think I just saw my daughter come back." She smiled. "I think I saw my son arrive." That night, when the house was quiet again, and the kids had fallen asleep under a blanket fort of their own making, Olivia stood on the back porch with Michael. She looked at the wind chime, then at him. "She's going to be okay." He nodded. "And so are we." There was no declaration, no dramatic music, no perfect line. Just a glance, a silence, a feeling. For the first time in a long time, they didn't need to fix anything. Because healing was already happening right there, in the quiet, where children became teachers and broken things became sacred. The envelope arrived on a Wednesday morning. Plain, cream-colored. No logo. No typed address. Just Michael's name written in gentle cursive. He found it in his mailbox, tucked between a grocery store flyer and an electric bill. Emma stood nearby, tracing chalk hearts on the sidewalk. "Anything good?" Michael turned the envelope over. No return address. No idea, he said. Might be a thank you card from school. But his fingers lingered on the seal. Something about the weight of the paper felt different, intentional, as if whoever sent it believed the paper itself would speak before the words did. He didn't open it right away. Instead, he placed it in his jacket pocket, where it stayed through lunch cello practice and a long walk in the park. Not until Emma was asleep, hair splayed like a golden halo across her pillow, did he return to the porch and slide his thumb under the seal. Inside was a single sheet, handwritten. No signature, no name. But he knew the handwriting, and the words struck deeper than he was ready for. Dear Michael, I thought I understood strength. I thought it meant never needing help, never bending, never letting anything shake the fortress I built around my life. And for years that worked. Until a quiet man in worn fatigues walked onto a plane and rearranged my entire belief system with a single act of kindness. You didn't just calm, Ethan. You didn't just show up. You stayed. And every time you stayed, something broken inside me healed slowly but surely. I've spent years in rooms where men talked in billions and futures and mergers, and I've never felt safe in any of them the way I felt safe beside you in that tiny living room with chipped coffee mugs and wind chimes singing in the breeze. You once said the universe speaks in silence. I'm starting to believe it speaks through children, too. Emma gave Ethan something I could never give the permission to be fully himself. And he's teaching her, too, in his own quiet way. I don't know what this is between us. I don't want to label it. But I know this: I'd rather spend one ordinary Tuesday morning talking with you about rain than 1,000 gala nights with anyone else. If you want that too, if you're willing, come find me at the old greenhouse this Friday. 10 a.m., no pressure, no grand gestures. Just two people who may have found peace in the middle of the noise. If not, I'll understand. Completely. But I had to say this because you once told me, sometimes calm is what remains after the storm. You are my calm. Michael sat motionless for a long time. The porch creaked under his weight. The wind moved through the trees. A cat padded softly across the neighbor's fence. And somewhere in the house, the wind chime rang once, twice, as if answering a question he hadn't yet asked aloud. Friday came wrapped in light rain. Michael stood by the kitchen window sipping coffee. Emma peered over her cereal bowl. You gonna play cello today? Maybe later, he said. Are you gonna see Miss Olivia? He turned. Why do you ask? 'Cause you shaved. Michael laughed. Busted. Emma grinned, a spoonful of Cheerios hovering midair. You look nervous. I am. You shouldn't be, she said with the supreme confidence of an 8-year-old. You're the nicest person ever. He reached over and tousled her hair. Thanks, kiddo. The greenhouse sat on the edge of an old estate Olivia had once restored for community programs, a forgotten place now turned quiet sanctuary. Vines curled along the windows. Moss claimed corners of the stone steps, but inside the air was warm and alive with the scent of lavender basil and blooming jasmine. She was already there. Olivia stood in the center, wearing a loose navy sweater, her hair braided down one shoulder, no makeup, no heels. She looked up when she saw him, not surprised, not startled, just relieved. As if part of her had been holding her breath until that very moment. He stepped inside. Didn't speak. She didn't either. Instead, she crossed the space, slowly stopping a foot away. Hi, she said. Hi. I wasn't sure you'd come. He smiled softly. I wasn't sure either. Still unsure, he shook his head. No. They stood in silence, the kind that doesn't press or demand, but expands like light through a leaf. Then Olivia reached into her bag and pulled out 2 paper cups. Tea, he took one. Sipped. Chamomile. With a little honey, she said. Emma's recommendation. Michael laughed, warm and quiet. She's got good taste. She does. For a long moment, there were no big declarations, no confessions of love, just the sound of water dripping, plants breathing, and two hearts learning how to beat at the same rhythm. And that, somehow, was enough. Back at home, Ethan and Emma were building a blanket tunnel. Ethan held up the center pole like a soldier on duty. Emma handed him pillow reinforcements. "You think they're holding hands?" "Yet," she whispered. Ethan smirked. "Probably." The first note was so soft, it might have been mistaken for wind. But Ethan heard it. He turned from the window, where he had been tracing shapes on the glass with his finger, and tilted his head toward the living room. The cello was singing again. Low, warm, and steady. Emma was already curled in the armchair with her legs tucked beneath her, a sketch pad balanced on her knees. Her crayons had been abandoned, replaced by the stillness of awe. Michael sat with his eyes closed, bow gliding gently across strings that had seen both silence and storm. His fingers calloused, but precise, knew exactly where the calm lived. And he went there, note by note, like returning to an old friend. In the kitchen, Olivia stopped drying dishes. She wiped her hands, slowly walked to the doorway and leaned on the frame, watching, listening, remembering. It had been 3 months since that morning at the greenhouse, since the letter, since two people both quietly scarred had chosen not to escape their wounds, but to build something beautiful around them. They hadn't rushed it. There were no sudden moves, no declarations shouted from rooftops, just morning coffees, park walks, cooking together while the kids giggled over burnt pancakes and musical forks. Every Wednesday, Ethan came over. At first, he wouldn't leave his mother's side. But now he wandered freely, drawn not by words, but by Emma's presence, her patience, her easy joy, her quiet acceptance that he didn't always want to speak, and that was perfectly okay. One Saturday, Emma handed him a crumpled paper, a drawing. It showed a plane in the clouds, a man with long hair and a white apron, a boy with headphones, and a girl holding his hand. "You kept it?" Michael had asked her, surprised. She nodded. "I want Ethan to know he's my hero, too." Olivia had turned away quickly, then pretending to stir soup. But Michael saw the shimmer in her eyes. And he said nothing, because he'd learned that sometimes the most powerful language is silence. Today was special, not for any reason the world might consider important. No awards, no galas, no press. Just 4 people. A porch, a cello, a sky turning amber with the promise of fall. Emma set down her sketch pad and slid to the floor, crawling over to Ethan. She held out her hand. Not to take, just to offer. Ethan hesitated, then placed his fingers in hers. She led him slowly to the middle of the room where Michael sat. And without a word, she placed Ethan's small hand on the body of the cello near the heart. Michael kept playing, and the vibrations passed from wood to hand to heart. Ethan's eyes widened, not with fear, with wonder. Then, unexpectedly, he reached forward and touched the strings, just once. A high note rang out slightly, sharp, slightly off, but beautiful in its own wild way. Emma beamed. "You played a note." Ethan smiled. It was small, but it stayed. That night after dinner, the children fell asleep early, curled like commas on the couch, surrounded by stuffed animals and warm blankets. Michael carried Ethan to Olivia's car, but she lingered on the porch. The stars had come out shy at first, then bolder. "Stay a bit," he said. She did. They sat on the porch swing wrapped in an old quilt. No words passed between them for a long time. Then Olivia whispered, "I used to think love had to be loud to be real." Michael smiled. "And now I think the quiet kind. The one that shows up every day, folds laundry, listens without fixing. That's the one that lasts." He reached over, took her hand. "I'm not perfect," he said softly. "Neither am I. I burn toast. I snore." They both laughed. The wind chimes sang behind them soft, uneven alive. Then silence returned. But it wasn't empty. It was full of memories, hope, and something new being born. Before Olivia left, she handed Michael a small box. "What's this? Open it later." He did. Inside was a folded note and a delicate bracelet made of thin silver threads, intertwined with a tiny charm, a music note wrapped around a heart. The note read, "For Emma, when she's ready to know that kindness is the bravest superpower there is." Michael held it tightly in his hand, and for the first time in a long time, he wept. In the months that followed, life continued not as a fairy tale, but as something better, real. Michael returned to his night janitor shift, but only part-time. By day, he taught cello to neighborhood kids in the community center Olivia helped fund. Emma became a quiet leader in her class, the kind who made sure no one sat alone at lunch. Ethan began stringing together 3, sometimes even 4 words. His favorite was, "Again, please." He said it every time Michael finished a song. And Olivia. She smiled more, slept better, and found herself dreaming again not of profits or boardrooms, but of birthday cakes, movie nights, and the simple magic of being loved exactly as she was. And so in a world often too loud to hear the things that matter most, they built a little haven where love spoke softly, healing came gently, and kindness was the language everyone understood, even without words, especially without words. Where are you watching from today? We love hearing your stories, whether you're tuning in from a quiet town in Iowa, a busy city in Texas, or somewhere across the ocean. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that kindness still matters, that strangers can become family, and that sometimes the quietest people do the loudest miracles, then we invite you to subscribe. This channel is where we honor stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary things, and you being here means more than you know. Thank you for spending time with us today. We'll see you in the next story. Until then, stay kind.